lot smaller room than the one I came to the last time I was down here. We're going to get to know each other very well tonight. My name's Matt, and I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Matt.
Hey, everybody. It's good to be here. Thank y'all for having me. Banks, thank you for asking me to come down here with you. I'll get some of my house cleaning out of the way. I have a sobriety date. It's June 24th, 2007. By the grace of God, I hadn't found it necessary to change my state of being in any other way than in a meeting. I have a home group. Banks was just talking about. It's the Emerywood group, and my home group is probably about as far from here to the door over here from my front door of my house. That's the type of alcoholic I am. I need to see my home group right across the street. We meet 3 times a week, Tuesday, Friday, and Saturday. All 3 meetings are literature meetings. I love it. That's what I need. Keeps us focused on the topic at hand. I have a sponsor. He's wandering around the building somewhere. I saw him go by right before the meeting started. I think he missed us in here, so he'll catch up with us eventually, I hope. I'll just jump right into it. I grew up in Summerfield, North Carolina. It's just north of Greensboro, if any of you are familiar with this little small town. I think it's basically been annexed into Greensboro at this point. It's a suburb of Greensboro now. I've lived in North Carolina my whole life, right around Summerfield, Greensboro, and now High Point. I think the furthest I ventured out was Liberty for a month and a half, 2 months. All my family is from Summerfield and Greensboro. Most of them are still pretty much right around the area. My brother lives out in Illinois now. He's the traveler of our family. But yeah, I grew up in a neighborhood that was at one time about 100 or so acres of family farmland that my great-grandparents owned, and when they were passing away, they left it to my grandmother. She split it all up between her 9 children, and they all turned it into a neighborhood, basically. So I grew up right in the center of my family. I'm the baby of those 9 aunts and uncles. I'm the youngest of all the grandkids in the family, so if y'all are alcoholics like me, y'all know I played that card quite well. Live right down the road from my grandma. If I ever got in trouble or anything, my mom was mad or my dad was mad, I could slip to her house real quick, and she'd call them, tell them to leave me alone. It wasn't my fault. And she'd give me some chicken and a biscuit or something while I was at her house, pat me and send me on the way. So there was no traumatic, there's nothing that I'll point to tonight and say, that's why I'm an alcoholic, that's why I drank like I did. I drank like I did because I'm an alcoholic, and alcohol affects me differently than a normal person. I don't understand that difference in them. I watch people sit a glass down half full, and I'm starting to feel it, I'm done, and I don't get that. I don't get that at all. I'm not feeling it enough. Let me have that one, and I'll try to get that one down too. But yeah, grew up out in Summerfield. The biggest thing back then was watching the sun go down. You know, that's when I need to be home for dinner time. The doors were unlocked all the time. I mean, it was as nice as it could be. I was on my bicycle, and I had a hatchet, and I cut trails through the woods, and that's what I did. You know, all those other cousins a lot of them were old enough to be aunts and uncles to me. So the closest person to my age was my brother. He's 5 years older than me, and I avoided him like the plague. He liked to hunt me with BB guns and stuff like that, just beat on me at random. So I learned really good to avoid him. One thing I do know is in that time period, and this is through working several steps, I became self-sufficient in that time. I kind of got up here a lot, you know, as I was out by myself and kind of independent from an early age. You know, I could kind of come and go as I wanted to, and I really just learned to depend on myself, and I kind of withdrew a little bit. I always thought that there was like the playbook. I've heard people share this, and that's one of the first things that really hooked me in. Is there was like a playbook to life that I missed somehow when they were handing that out, you know. I blame my brother a lot for that. I felt like he was my older brother. He was supposed to pass down the do's and don'ts of middle school and high school and all that, and I missed all that stuff. But you know, I went through, just touch on a few things that I do remember. Like one of my first resentments is my mom had me tested for all the like ADHD, learning disabilities, all the alphabet stuff. And I remember sitting outside the principal's office and hearing him say, well, no, he doesn't test for any of this stuff. You know, he's fine. And I heard her say, well, there's got to be something wrong. You know, it's because I was so bad in school. I was just a goof off, and I was playing around all the time. And they said, well, no, he doesn't have anything wrong with him. He's just lazy. And first alcoholic thought probably is, I'll show you lazy. You know, has anybody ever hurt yourself to hurt somebody else? I started just really screwing around and getting lazier in school, and just halfway applying myself, halfway listening. That caught up to me eventually. I'm also a joker. You know, one thing that I can do really good is get all y'all to laugh at somebody else so y'all don't see me. I'm really good at making jokes and stuff like that, and keeping the attention away from me the best way I can. I can hide behind that stuff. but yeah, screwed around all through school. I got to high school, that caught up with me. Once you've messed around enough in algebra, you cannot find X. You can't find it. If you didn't figure out how to find Y at the beginning of the year, you can't find X later, So I ended up failing that, and I got to my senior year, and they called me to the office, and they said, you've missed 100 and some amount of days of school, and there's not that many more really in a year of school. And they said, at this point, you're going to have to come on Saturday. You're going to have to come Monday through Friday after school for a couple hours each day, and you're going to have to basically make straight A's the rest of the year if you want to even attempt to graduate. And I was like, well, I brought all my books with me. How about I just give y'all these and I'll drop out? That's I'm lazy. I really am. I found that out about myself. So I gave my books and dropped out of school. And I was a sandwich artist at the time. I was working at Subway part-time, and my mom was so disappointed, She kept saying, you got to do something, And I'll tell you what, I found out I really am lazy, because this is back when Subway had white or wheat, and all the meats were already prepackaged in the paper where they flipped them onto the bread. Y'all remember that? Mm-hmm. And that was just too much work for me. I came home one night and I said, I've been really thinking about this, and I need my high school diploma to, if I'm going to be something in my life, I need to go back to school. And she was so proud, but really I just didn't want to do anything, so I'll go ride through school for another year. I went back and took, I think English was the only real class I took. I took like home ec and applied math and stuff, just enough to get the credits I needed. And I'm pretty sure the faculty really didn't want another attempt at it. So we kind of we had a little quiet understanding, just get through the year and show up as much as you can. And we don't want you back after that. The day after graduation, me and my brother packed all our stuff, and my dad had a house in it's Greensboro, but it's really close to High Point. It's north of Greensboro, or south of Greensboro. There's about 3.5 acres of farmland. And, if you picture an old farmhouse, like the first thing that comes to mind, that 2-story white house with a single story in the back, that was what it was. And it was big chicken coops and log cabins. It was a really cool place. We moved in there, and my best friend and my brother's best friend, all four of us, and we rented it from my dad for $400 a month. $100 each. That was it. And he kept showing up every month at the beginning of the month wanting that $100 from each of us. It was crazy. Every month he'd show up wanting that money. That was $100. That was a lot of money back then. We were too busy having keg parties and bonfires and four-wheeling, all kinds of fun stuff around the area out there. So it got really frustrating. We finally realized we could throw keg parties right at the end of the month and make enough money off the kegs to pay our rent at the beginning of the month. That worked a lot. We filled our oil tank off of it because we were so broke we couldn't fill up that oil tank at the winter. There were mornings I woke up with frost on my nose because it was so cold in the house. I had about 6 blankets piled up on me. And I thought that was okay. I thought that was the way people lived. I thought we're just having fun. The best way I can describe that house is if you picture the movie Animal House, PCU, something like that wild frat house, and then take the college situation out of it. That's where we lived. It was just a flop house. We would go to GTCC, the community college down the road, pass out flyers. None of us were going to school down there, but we were like the frat house for that community college. We'd go pass out flyers, and this is how manipulative and deceiving we are. We knew that we would invite a few of those people with those flyers, and they'd pass around, and 100 people would show up just at the drop of a dime for this keg party we were throwing. We'd have a couple kegs sitting there. They'd all show up and line Kivett Drive with cars, so eventually the neighbors would give in and call the police. The police would show up, and I would stay sober and sell beer off the kegs, and as soon as the police would show up, I'd see them coming. I go out in the driveway, man, somebody has passed out flyers. We don't know who these people are. They just showed up. My friends that were invited, that we knew that were coming over, they'd bring tents and throw them out in the yard, and they would spend the night. I'd say, we invited these people. They brought tents because they were going to drink a little bit of alcohol and they didn't want to drive, but these other people just showed up, and we can't get them to leave. So then the police would escort everybody off the property and get them all out of there, and I'd be standing there with a couple $100 that these people just paid for the kegs. We'd drain the kegs and go get ourselves another keg and still wake up with a knot of money the next day. We did that. Nobody ever caught on to that either. I mean, the police were basically our bouncers and didn't even know it. But, my dad, I'll tell you this too. One of my friends, I'm also a hypocrite. I'm a lot of things. I've learned this stuff through working these sales. I'm a really good hypocrite. When I was in high school, one of my buddies started getting really into outside issues from AA, and like a good hypocrite, I kept telling him, that stuff's bad, you need to stop that, whatever. And like a good using alcoholic person he just stopped hanging out with me. That fixed that that problem. But he called me up. It had been like a year and a half, 2 years since I had talked to him. And he's like, hey, my girlfriend's best friend is single, and she's kind of like the third wheel, and, I think you two would hit it off really good. I said, well, cool, y'all come out and hang out, we'll catch up, blah, blah, blah. So at about 2:30, 3 o'clock that morning, him and his girlfriend and this other girl show up at our house, and by this point, me and my buddy Marcus are sitting out in his car in my driveway, passing Jim Beam and Mountain Dew back and forth. We're just sitting there listening to the radio because it's 2:30 in the morning, and we're the only ones left standing. This car pulls in, and we kind of stumble out of the car. How guys are, kind of bulk up who's pulling up in our driveway at 2:30 in the morning. And through the beer goggles, all I can see is this blurry image of this little short girl coming up, blonde hair. She had blonde hair and a red sweater on. And she was walking like this, and when she got close, I realized she had a 12-pack under each arm and one in each hand. And she walked up, and she's like, hey, I don't know if you like Budweiser or Bud Light or Miller Light or Natural Light. I brought one of each, and my heart stopped. There's a such thing as love at first sight. I fell instantly in love with this girl right there on the spot. And I'll tell you, she's 5'3", and she could drink the biggest of my buddies under the table. She loved to drink tequila, and I would just, God, it made me so proud. That's my girl right there, man. My buddies, I've seen dudes 200 pounds just drop off of their chair at a table sitting there trying to drink shots of tequila with her. And I mean, God, I was so proud of her. That's my girlfriend right there. But yeah, we hit it off right there from the spot, and she pretty much was living in that house. I remember my dad saying, man, she must really like you to stay in that house because we'd have no heat. She'd spend the night over there, and we'd wake up, like I said, with frost on your nose, piled under blankets on the mattress I had laying on the floor because I didn't have a bed. It was just, that's how we lived. And me and her decided we were too grown up for my dad to keep coming asking for that money every month. So we went and got ourselves a little one-bedroom apartment in Greensboro, and, that talks about in the book, you'd arrived. We thought we were big time then. We had our own place, and my dad wasn't coming asking for rent money. My dad's been pretty influential in my life. I was always scared to death of him, but he really did drop a lot of good hints for me here and there. He was just watching me steadily progress downhill. But he would say, if you're at this point too, after I graduated high school, I was driving a delivery van for an art supply store in Greensboro. I was going around delivering blueprint vellums and stuff like that, surveying equipment. I knew my way around Greensboro, and I could kind of go and do what I wanted to do. So it was a great job for me. All I had to do is show up and hit the clock, and I could go crash out in the van for a little bit, and nobody'd smell the beer on my breath because I could get right out of the building. He said, you need a trade, or you need to join the military or something. You're not really going anywhere in this. You need to be doing some kind of trade work or something so you can have some kind of skill to say that you can do this, So I started thinking, I thought of electric work, and I thought, no, I'll kill myself. I'll get electrocuted because all I knew was there was electricity involved, and I can't do that. And he said plumbing, and I thought, oh, no, because I thought all plumber did was tear out a dirty toilet. And I thought, no, I can't do that. I don't want to mess with that. Well, how about heating and air work? I know nothing about that, so that's the trade for me. So I actually ended up finding a job at a little company that was just starting off. I got really good at it. The owner of the company took me as his helper because they only had one other employee at the time. The other owner, was doing the service work, and me and the other owner were doing the installation work, and he taught me, this is how I want this done, this is the way you do it. And everybody at work called me company man because, after a while the company kind of grew, and I was company man because, no, Raymond doesn't like it like that. Do it like this. We like to tell people what to do. I worked at that job for right at 10 years. It was a pretty good job. I learned a lot of cool stuff doing construction work. I learned to speak some really inappropriate Spanish. I learned a lot about carpentry and different things like that. It was a fun job. I'll back up a little bit. I'm jumping ahead. So me and Priscilla, that was her name, we moved into this apartment together, and all our friends started being really weird. They all started pairing off and getting married, and then they'd start having kids, and she's giving me these weird looks. I'm like, what's going on here? Everybody, I started feeling trapped, and I said, hey, here's a ring. You want to get married? Okay, that's the right answer. So we ended up getting married. And I was doing heating and air work by that time. She was working at Panera. She was going to 3. I don't know how in the world she was doing this because she drank like me. She was going to 3, 4 in the morning baking bread and stuff like that. I don't know how she did it, but she showed up all the time. But we went and got married, and our wedding was a reception at the American Legion Hall. We had a couple kegs of beer, a refrigerator full of microbrew beers, bottles and bottles of wine and champagne, a champagne fountain. and some country music and stuff like that. And man, we thought it was just the best thing ever. Man, the American Legion Hall people liked us. They had their little private bar beside it. They ended up inviting us over, and they were coming over drinking beer with us, and ended up being in a fight before the end of the night. It was very typical alcoholic wedding. Like 1 o'clock that morning, we'd gone back to my dad's house, and we were still over there drinking, and we were going to Cancun. We were supposed to be at the airport at like 4 in the morning. It's like 1 o'clock, and we're at my dad's house drinking. We haven't packed anything yet. And me and her are in a fight by this point, and we drive home, and there's a road called Guilford College. It basically runs right through the center of Greensboro from one side all the way to the other. My dad lives way on the south side of it, and our apartment was way out towards the airport. And we were driving down Guilford College, and we're fighting so bad. And we stop at this light near Wendover Avenue. It's probably the worst intersection in Greensboro. You could have something going down. And she gets out of the car and is walking away. And I can't believe I married you. And I'm like, good, I can't believe you did either. And she's walking down Guilford College in a wedding dress out at Wendover Avenue at like 1 o'clock in the morning. Now, I'd like to say, I stopped and thought, I love this lady, I need to get this back and make this right. But all I was thinking is she is going to get me a DUI. I've got to get her back in the car. So I'm riding along beside her. Please get back in the car. Please get back in the car. She finally got in, and our honeymoon was not probably what she pictured as a child. It took like 4 days before we finally really started talking to each other again. And we were so miserable in Cancun. I think we were just drunk the whole time. All I remember at Cancun is there was a bar in the pool. I'd never heard of that before. I thought that was the coolest thing ever. We woke up and we kind of halfway talked to each other, and we went out and sat at those little concrete chairs in the pool and sat at that bar and drank, and that's what our honeymoon was basically. And when we came back, our apartment in Greensboro had really started going downhill. It was just a lot of really bad guys in that neighborhood. A lot of guys were like piling into apartments together and partying and stuff. And it got so bad that she couldn't even walk her dog out in the backyard without 20 guys on the balcony yelling at her and stuff like that. And I'm there by myself, so I'm not that big and bad. I just get in the house, I'll walk the dog, But we ended up finding a house. That's when we moved to High Point. As soon as we moved into the house there, our friends were all having kids and stuff, and she started giving me those weird looks again. I'm like, hey, we should have a kid. Yes, right answer. Good job. And, she stopped drinking when she got pregnant, and I'd like to say I stopped drinking and, kind of straightened up. I was getting really bad into other outside issues. I won't talk about it in an AA meeting, but a lot of that stuff was going on too. But really what happened to me during that whole time is I learned to be a little bit better of a liar for a while, and then I thought I was a better liar, and I was really just getting sloppier at it. But she was sober through the pregnancy, and I'm drinking harder and hiding it harder and finding more and more excuses to be out. Me and my dad built a little building out in the backyard. It's a little 8x10 utility shed or whatever. It ended up being my man cave. There was no heat or air in there. There was power. I had a PlayStation and a TV and a radio and a cooler and my guitar, and that whole first year, my daughter just turned 10. I told y'all I got sober in 2007, so this is a full year of her first year. I'm going to work and going out and sitting in the building every night drinking beer, and I think I'm slick. I think this is a good idea because she knows I'm out there, so she doesn't think I'm running around on her. I'm not out getting a DUI. I'm not in any kind of trouble. I'm out here drinking, and this is okay, Freezing during the winter, sweating it out during the summer. It was crazy, Every day I'd come home, I'll get a beer out of the refrigerator and chug it down. I'd get another beer and go take a shower because I was filthy from doing construction work. I'd speak for a minute and I'd be out in the building for a year almost. That's what every day. That just summed up a whole year of my life basically. And in the meantime, I've got my first daughter in the house. I'm missing it. I'm missing all of it. When she gave birth, I had a couple of 24 stashed in a bag. I stayed at the women's hospital, and I had a solo cup. Poured beer in the cup. That's not one of my proudest moments, but I stayed at the hospital because that's the right thing, but nobody else knew I was there drinking, so I had to drink while I was there with my brand new baby girl. It started getting really bad. She got pregnant again, and this time I had gotten really sloppy, and she was sober, and she could really see what was going on now, like how just not worth the crap I was. That heating and air job I had that I was happy at, I was proud of the job. I was one of their first employees. I had a lot of respect from a lot of the contractors and stuff. And I was really hungover one morning, and I went to work, and we did a lot of flexible duct work. It's cushiony, it's big insulation, wrapped in metal. And my boss left the job site, and the contractor wasn't there. And I sat down, and I had all intentions of just sitting there trying to collect myself for a little bit, and I passed out. And somebody called and told my boss I was asleep on the job site, and I woke up with my boss standing over me. That was not a very great moment in my life. He sent me home, and he ended up suspending me for like 2 days, and I came back to work, and he gave me $1 pay cut an hour, and I probably could have lived with that, but all the guys I worked with, construction is not a very friendly trade to be in. They don't come and comfort you and feel bad for you. Everybody was just, I was getting ripped at every turn. I couldn't open my mouth with it being something about getting cut $1 an hour or falling asleep on the job or something. I had no humility. I had no grace at this point. I couldn't do it. I made it like 3 days. I ended up driving my van home one day and unloaded all my tools and stuff and went and parked the van back. And I've been working there for 10 years and just walked away. And I really thought that the phone would just blow up. All these contractors I've been working for, I did a lot of side work for real estate people, property owners. I was like, my phone is going to light up when they find out I'm not working there anymore. And nobody was calling. So I ended up getting a job doing electric work, basically being a helper for my buddy's uncle, doing just running wires basically is the most I can handle with that. So I did that for a little bit, and my drinking was really getting bad. I was just really depressed, you know. I walked away from something I enjoyed doing and was proud of doing, and I just really started hammering down. Our second daughter came along. Well, no. My wife was still really pregnant with her, and Father's Day was coming, and my wife was trying to make a big deal out of Father's Day. You know, our daughter was just born before Father's Day the first time, so this was kind of the real first Father's Day. She got a card and all this stuff, and the day before Father's Day, I woke up, and it was one of those mornings where I had to get out and I had to go start drinking. I didn't have a whole lot of excuses, so I'm like, hey, I've got this tool I borrowed from my boss. I need to run it back out to his house real quick. I told him I'd return it. She's like, oh, okay, whatever. So I get out to his house, and him and his neighbor are sitting in the driveway with a cooler full of beer parked between them, and they're like, you want a beer? Sure. It's like 11 o'clock Saturday morning. Started drinking with them. At like 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, somewhere in that time of night, I finally just turned my phone off because she kept calling me. She kept calling me. And it was the first time I didn't have, this is what I'm doing, this is why, or this is your fault. Or I had no argument or no excuse for what I was doing. I didn't even know what I was doing. You know, I was just drinking. And I turned the phone off, and at about 12 o'clock or so, like the good hypocrite I am, my buddy Joe was wanting to go home because he knew he was in trouble, and I said, you know, you've been drinking too much. He started drinking with us at like 5 or 6 that night. I've been drinking since 11 that morning. I said, you've been drinking too much to drive. I'll drive you home. Good guy, buddy guy, you know. So I go drive him. Surprisingly, he lives off of Guilford College Road. I had a lot of good things happen there. I dropped him off, and between Guilford College and our house in High Point, I came up with my lie. I parked my car at the top of our driveway, and I went out to the building. I kept drinking. I was way out there. I kept on drinking, and my excuse was going to be when she came in the morning, I was going to act like I was asleep and wake up and say, I'm a good guy. You know, I didn't want to wake you up because you're pregnant and wake the baby up, so I went out to the building to sleep. You know, I got home at 11 or 12. She'd been up calling me all night. I forgot to have my phone turned off. She heard me come in the driveway and saw me go in the building. So that morning, I hear the house door open because I'm still up drinking in the building. I hear the doors open. I hear the car doors open. I hear it back and forth. I'm like, what is she doing? And finally, I hear her walking towards the building, and she opens the door, and I'm kicked back in the chair trying to act like I'm asleep, and she just stands there, and I tried to yawn and everything like I'm just waking up. It was really embarrassing. And I started trying to lay out the lie. And see, this is my winning point right here. When I start laying out the lie, if she grabs onto it, I can beat her in the argument. You know, I can make this her fault. I've done it so many times. This will be your fault before we finish talking. And she said, I can't believe you, something. And I stood up and was about to start the argument. And she turned around and was walking back to her car. And she looked back and said, you're not worth it. And went and got in the car. And I was standing there in the building door. And she drove a 4Runner. It was sitting right here. And I could see our daughter's head just over the top of the window, you know. And she got in the car, and I could see a pile of clothes and stuff in there. And she drove away. And see, this is a very pivotal moment for me. That absolutely is my bottom, I believe. You know, I can remember exactly what the air felt like that morning. I could, if I was an artist, I could draw you a picture of it still 9 years later. I remember exactly the way that morning went down and what I felt like, because what happens the first time that an alcoholic like me with a mouth that can blame anybody and their brother was standing by himself with nobody to blame. I didn't have any excuse to put on anybody else, no fault to lay at somebody else. It was all my fault, and she left me there with it. It's a scary place to be for an alcoholic. Like a good alcoholic, I kept on drinking. I was drinking at her, and now I'm mad at her, and I'm drinking. I'm going to come up with a way to make this her fault. And my sobriety date's June 24th, and I picked that out of thin air, basically, because from the time she left to about a week later, I kind of lost my mind. Days and nights run together. I don't remember ever going to bed. I don't remember sleeping. I don't remember waking up. I don't remember leaving my house. I know that I had a 12-pack when this started. I drank for a week straight and never ran out of beer. I don't remember leaving my house. That scares the death out of me, I don't remember ever getting in my car at all, and I never ran out of beer. My mind took me to some really weird places that week. And my dad ended up coming over, and I had him convinced, this is how good of a manipulator I was. After a week of this, my dad came over, and I was able to convince him that she was probably running around on me, or something. Somehow it was her fault. He believed it, And he left, and I was walking back into our house, and I was going to get another beer, and that little shot went through my head. So you're going to die. It wasn't in my voice either. It was in my head, but it wasn't my voice. I got the beer out of the refrigerator. I was just like, where did that come from? And about to pop the beer open, I was like, I can't do this anymore, And I absolutely believe that there's a higher power that has stepped into my life, because I picked my phone up and I called my dad. He'd been gone for about a minute. I called him and I just dumped all this garbage that I've been telling y'all about. I just told him everything, like all this bad stuff I've been doing, and I can't stop. I've crossed some line, and I keep trying to stop, but it never happens. I might make it a day. I was at it, luckily a day sometimes was the best I could put together at trying to stay sober. I didn't know anything about Alcoholics Anonymous or drinking problem or anything like that. I was just lost, kind of. A lot of y'all are smarter than me. Y'all knew there was this problem and there was a cure. I didn't know any of that stuff. I was just stuck. And I called him. I just dumped all this stuff. Basically did a fifth step without knowing what a fifth step was over the phone to my dad. And I don't suggest that to anybody. But it made me feel better. It was like the first time I dumped some of this garbage out. How you feel after you do a fifth step, that lighter, feels like something's off your back feeling. I felt that. So I called my mom. I woke her up, and I started telling her all this stuff too. And I felt a little bit better. I called my brother up in Illinois and started telling him about all this stuff too. And I was dumping my problem off on them again. Now it's their problem. They're sitting there worried to death. I'm drinking and telling them about all this stuff. But at some point that night I passed out. And I slept basically for like a day and a half straight. My phone had died. The doors were unlocked to the house. I wasn't smart enough to lock the doors or anything. But my dad came over because they were all trying to call me, and they were like, he's done died or killed himself or something, because I wasn't answering for like a day straight. And my dad came in and woke me up, and I got a little bag of stuff together and ended up going to his house. All these other outside issues I was talking about, that's what I had focused in on. That's my problem. It's not drinking or anything. So when my dad picked me up to take me to his house, we stopped at the grocery store. I got a case of beer because I was going to be at his house and I didn't know how long. And he didn't see a problem with that. He's taking me, and we're trying to figure out about treatment centers and stuff, and went and got a case of beer to go drink while I'm figuring this out. I don't know if any of y'all have heard of Hoke Valley, but that's where I ended up going. And I basically picked it out of the fact that it was the cheapest of all the other ones by thousands of dollars. And, I absolutely believe I got there for a reason. That place is nothing but the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. There is amazing sobriety up in the mountains up there. I wish I could say I got 28 days worth of good knowledge, but it took about 10 to 14 days before I finally conceded a little bit and started to listen to what they were trying to tell me. I was fighting with them at every turn. It's this outside issue, or it's this person, or it's her fault. It's the bank want money. It's everything I could think of. I was trying to blame the problems on that, and I went into the guy named David's office, David S. He was counselor up there at the time. I think he's at Fellowship Hall in Greensboro now. And I picked him because he was the biggest, baddest counselor up there at the time. I was like, man, I need to talk to you. I'm not trying to pick a fight, but I need you to just explain why y'all keep saying I'm an alcoholic, why I have to be an alcoholic, Well, Gary Knight walked by and heard me saying this to him, and if anybody knows Gary came in there and shut the door, and I'm like, damn, I'm about to get kicked out of here now, And they sat down, they started talking to me, and they weren't telling me, you need to do this or you need to do that. What they started doing is telling me about, when I drank, I did this, and when I drank, I felt like that. And I'm sitting there, we're having a conversation. I'm listening. I'm agreeing. And all of a sudden I realized they stole the whole argument from me. They didn't tell me I had to do anything or I was anything. They told me about themselves, and I was agreeing. And I knew exactly what it felt like. I knew exactly what they meant. They 12-stepped me, and I didn't even know it. They tricked me. That was one of those. There's moments in our life where you can look back and you see a direct change in the path you're walking on. That conversation was one of them. I couldn't argue with them. They took the argument from me and left me sitting there with one option. I agree too much with these guys. There's a problem here, and I think they've got the solution. I started listening. Everybody I was at Hope Valley with, as far as I know, relapsed. There was probably 20 or 30 of us there. I don't know anybody else that still goes. We all traded numbers, and we're all going to stay sober together. One by one they stopped answering, we'd all show up at Hope Valley sometimes on the weekends together. They all faded out, and somehow I kept going. I don't suggest the path that I've taken through AA and trying to stay sober, because what I did is when I came back home, I ended up getting my job back doing heating and air work with that company. I stayed sober for about a month, and they could tell a change. I was pretty good friends with the guys by that point. I'd worked for them for a long time. They gave me my job back with a severe pay cut, and I heard y'all talking about humility in the rooms. I'm being humble. I'm gonna take this pay cut, and I'm gonna prove myself, and I'll get the money back eventually. But basically, my whole first year and almost a half, I went to work every day in Greensboro. I got off of work and I drove straight down 85 and get to High Point to the club for the 5:30 early bird. And I would sit in the back of the room, and Bill L., one of the old timers that was there, knew my name, and another guy named Scott knew my name, and I think everybody else just knew I was there. I didn't have a sponsor. I was working the steps on the wall in my head, and I got that. Check, double check. I did that one really good. My sponsor agrees with me on this. So, I sat there for a year and a half, just miserable. I was drying up like a prune. I was just shriveling up. In the meantime, Priscilla, who the girl with the 2 cases under the arm, surprise, surprise, she went to treatment. She's alcoholic too. I'd say that because she says it. She went to treatment. She came home, and she was trying to go to NA, and it just really not fabulous in High Point from what I understand. I haven't been to any of their meetings, but she came home. She was really disappointed with it. And I was like, go to the club. I'm a hypocrite. I'm not even going to meetings hardly at all at this point. Go to the club. There's some good sobriety in there. They know what they're talking about. And I'm telling her to do something I'm not hardly doing. So she goes to the club, and she gets a sponsor, and she starts working the steps and gets deep into the book. Man, the women at High Point, the ones that are serious about some recovery. They get into this book. And she starts changing right in front of my face. That light we see pop on. I'm sitting at home miserable watching TV, and she's coming in happy talking about steps such and such and this person and that and all this stuff. I'm starting to get a resentment at her. I've got a resentment at my bosses because it's been almost a year and a half now, and I still haven't got all that money I thought they'd just throw back at me when they saw how much better I was now. I wasn't getting that. I was just miserable, it was more miserable than drinking almost, I think. I was alone. You can be alone in a room of Alcoholics Anonymous. It's not a fun place to be. I wouldn't stick my hand out. Everybody probably thought my name was Fine. How you doing? I'm fine. That's the end of the conversation. That's the end of the conversation. I'm fine. And I'd smoke my cigarette, and that was it. But yeah, she came in one night. She was working at the hospital late, and she came home. She's like, I'm tired. I don't feel like going to a meeting tonight. You can go if you want to. And I hadn't even been in like a month or so at this point. I was like, okay, I know she's trying to trick me. I'll show her. I'll go to the meeting. I went into the meeting. I'm sitting there in the back row of my seat. I went in and claimed my seat again. It was still open for me. I went in and sat back there. And I don't know what it was. Maybe it was God knocking again or what. I couldn't tell you what the topic was, what anybody said in that meeting at all. But all this stuff started flooding at me that I'm so mad at my bosses. They don't respect me. They don't pay me what I can make my fist up, I'm sitting there making columns in my head of all these resentments and all these things that are wrong. Priscilla's so much happier now. Why is she happy? Why did she get a sponsor? All these things. And I was just like, oh, my God. I walked out to smoke a cigarette, and this guy was coming in. And I was just like, hey, whoa, whoa. And I'd heard him sharing meetings before. I knew he had some kind of spirituality going on. Like, you're going to be my sponsor, and we need to start working the steps. And he's just like, whoa, slow down. Let's talk for a minute, I just kind of dumped on him. I was like, man, I've been here for a year and a half. I need to get to work because I'm about to get drunk. I can feel it all over me, He's like, all right. And we got busy. We started doing step work. And, that light feeling I was talking about after doing a fifth step, man, I don't know if it was because I had enough time to realize how bad it was or what, but that first fifth step I went at as hard as I could, and I put some dumb, very irrelevant stuff on there, trying to put everything I could think of that I had ever did wrong on anything. You know, I don't know if you remember the movie Goonies, when they're like, tell us what you did, and Chunk starts telling them stuff and like throwing up in the movie theater when that was my fifth step. Everything I could think of, I was putting into it. And it came to a point that night where I was like tapping him to wake him up because I had so much, you know. I'm like, am I boring you? He's like, no, I'm sorry, it's just getting late, you know. All right, here's more, page 15, you know. And we did it, and he stayed awake, and he listened to it all, you know. And when I walked out his apartment, man, the sun was starting to come up, you know. The birds were starting to chirp. I used to hate that sound more than anything on earth, is those damn birds waking up in the morning, you know. Don't do that. That means the sun's coming, you know. Hated it. That was one of the worst things on earth, is those birds coming out. And I remember walking across the parking lot at his apartment just feeling free, like absolutely free. I felt like 20 pounds lighter. I felt like that bag of garbage that I've been carrying around and clutching on my back so hard, I left it in his apartment, you know. We sat and burned that fifth step together, like just lit it on fire. And I remember sitting there like, this is dumb, you know, this is supposed to be something special. When we started burning that thing, I mean, it got me. I was just like, oh my God, I just let all that stuff go, you know. It was powerful. I've done several fifth steps since then. I've had a couple of different sponsors. That guy ended up, he's really heavily involved in church, and somehow he's still sober and he's doing that, but he doesn't really go to meetings anymore. That's the path he chose. My sponsor now, who is still apparently very lost in this church somewhere, he's still not in here. I was at a weird place in sobriety at like, I think 4 or 5 years or something like that. I was just kind of getting stagnant. You know, that's the best word I can describe it. Just think about a stagnant pond, how it's just kind of frosted over the top. It's just kind of nasty. You know, I really wasn't getting a lot out of meetings anymore. I just wasn't feeling that freedom. You know, is it really worth it? I was starting to forget. I'm starting to forget how much worse it was. And this guy's always laughing. He's always in the meeting with a smile and a joke. You can't say anything without thinking about it before you say it to him, because he'll twist it into something bad if you're not careful. But he just happened to be in that place at the time when I was realizing something was wrong, and I asked him to sponsor me. And we've been together for a little over 4 years now, and it's awesome, man. He had what I wanted. You know, that's all I saw, is like, he's really happy and he's enjoying this. You know, I didn't come here to be miserable. I was already miserable. But he is taking this thing. You know, life is a whole lot of fun without even having to be messed up to do it. You know. When I was living that party house, all I thought life was party. You know, go to work, come home, party. Go to work, come home, party. Go to work, blah, blah, blah. I didn't know what other people did, like normal people that don't drink like that. I didn't know what to do with life. I was scared to death. Like, I could picture myself sitting in the library for the rest of my life, picking out the next good book, and that's the most exciting thing that could happen, which I do like to read. But I could use a couple extra hours every day now. There's so much in our lives. You know, me and my wife, we have a sober house together. We've had another child. We got 3 little girls. I need this program more than ever. I got a 10-year-old, an 8-year-old, and a 5-year-old. The odds are stacked against me. But we have a sober house. I used to always tell this when I spoke, it'd be a lie to say it is the way it is now, but when they were really little, before the third one came along, when the 2 little ones were there, me and her really got into this thing. You know, if I was at work and she needed a meeting, the kids went to the meeting. You know, everybody's an aunt and uncle in the meetings. They know everybody in High Point. They know as well as we do. They know them. We took them to meetings and stuff, and it started. It's so funny. They did it more because we laughed about it. But we started saying the blessing at dinner, and at the end of the blessing, they'd say, "Keep coming back." They did this forever. I mean, it was the sweetest thing on earth. They just did it out of the blue one night, both of them. Amen. Keep coming back. Whoa, that's a good thing. You know, that's kind of a testament to the way the house is going. It's really awesome. You know, we do very good to stay very much away from each other's program. If you want to end a fight or start a fight, you say, call your sponsor in our house. There's nothing left to be said between either of us at that point. I hear some people say that they're married and they've been sober and they never fight. You know, we have some knockdown drag out sometimes. That's just, we're 2 different people. You know, if we never fought, we'd be the same person. So, but we don't go to bed hating each other like we used to. We don't take a 3-day no speaking to each other. You know, we work it out. And sometimes we have to just agree to disagree that night just so we don't go to bed hating each other, you know. But you know, we're getting ready to celebrate our 13-year anniversary being married together, and neither of us have been sober near that long, so it's pretty amazing how, there wasn't much chance of us liking each other when we got sober, honestly. But yeah, I went back and was doing that heating and air job, and my aunt and uncle, I've been extremely blessed. My aunt and uncle live up in Virginia, really wealthy, and they knew my grandmother would keep them filled in on how things were going. They were concerned. They knew how bad a shape I was in, and they came down for Thanksgiving. They're like, we want you to come over and talk to us before dinner or whatever. So I go over. I'm like, what in the world is this? And they offered to send me back to school to try to go to get my associate's degree or something, see if I couldn't get out of the work I was doing, because I was in the van with these guys, and we'd stop every day at the liquor store, at the gas station. They were passing left-handed cigarettes in front of me. I'm just sitting there on the bucket like, oh God, and it was an everyday thing. How long was I going to last? And this is during the time where I really wasn't working that hard at doing anything to stay sober, so a lot of miracles have happened in my life. But they sent me back. I went to Forsyth Tech, and I told you I was a high school dropout, went back into home ec basically to get out of school. I went to Forsyth Tech sober. They supported my family. I did not have, it wasn't in me to let somebody else take over my family. I had too much of an ego for that, and I was willing to do that. I would have said no if I'd have been drinking still. But I went to Forsyth Tech. I made 25 straight A's at Forsyth Tech and a B. I still remember that B. We're collectors of ones. I remember that B, but I worked my butt off and I still got that B. So, but yeah, I graduated with honors. I was on the dean's list and chancellor's list and stuff like that. And right before my last semester, I was trying to figure out what I was going to do, because it was just an associate's. It really wasn't applied towards anything in particular. I was freaking out. I was talking to my uncle. I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know what I'm going to do now, because I gave up a pretty decent job to go do this, and now I don't know what I'm going to do with this. And he said, keep going to school. You're doing great. Go on and get your bachelor's. Okay, so I applied to UNCG, and I got into UNCG. And I did not make 25 straight A's at UNCG, but I did the best I could at UNCG. I made a lot of A's. I was on their chancellor's list and dean's list and all that good stuff. And they allowed me to be in an honor society, which I still think is hilarious. Me in an honor society. It's amazing. I was walking through UNCG one day, and I don't know if y'all are familiar with it at all, but Spring Garden Street cuts right through the center of UNCG, and the art supply store I worked at was on Spring Garden. I used to drive that delivery van through there, and I would just cuss those students walking across the street because I was so hungover, and if I could just get through UNCG, there was all these neighborhoods that I could pull off in and crawl in the back of the van and sleep for 30 minutes, or just go throw up somewhere, or just get off the road for a minute, or whatever I needed to do. And I hate those people, I was walking across Spring Garden one day with those people. I was going into a class, and luckily I was off the street, and I'd made it to the sidewalk, and I just stopped dead in my tracks, and I realized that those people, the reason I hate them is because they were doing something that I'd always wanted to do, and I didn't even know it, I didn't know who I was, what I wanted, where I was going to try to go in life, nothing. And I was on a path, I was going to a class because it was 8 o'clock in the morning, and I was awake, and I felt good, and I was happy to be there. And I had watched the sun coming up. I was there in a moment, and that might seem simple and kind of irrelevant, but that's one of those moments. I've had several of them. I'm doing what I want to do, and I'm happy. That's what this program has given me. I can come all the way down here, and I don't know any of y'all by name, but I feel like I'm at home. I can sit here and tell y'all about my life because we have something in common with each other. There's nowhere else on earth I can go and do this, I told somebody I was going to speak for like 40 people, 50 people maybe, however many are in here, and they're like, how do you do that? And I was like, well, it's like talking to your family, Y'all, I didn't tell y'all anything special that y'all haven't heard before, It's just what we do. It's for the newcomers, I definitely, I've tried to figure out, I've watched so many people go in and out. This last year's been tough. My wife had a major surgery, and she had to have some serious drugs in our house to get through it. They cut into her head and went behind her eye. I mean, I won't give you all the details, but it was bad. And I watched her have meetings at our house. I watched those women surround her. I watched her get back off of those drugs and stay sober and call people and tell them what she was feeling like. And I don't know that I could have made that journey. She was on some intense stuff in our house, I got to watch that happen this year. Our best friends, I've been sober for 9 years. She's been sober for 7 years. Our friends, another married couple in High Point, were sober for 6 and 7 years. They just celebrated 6 and 7 years, and they both just went way back out, like mind-boggling. It sent a ripple through High Point. Like, they were good AA, and nobody knows what in the world. It just out of nowhere, they both just dropped off, and they came back at AA with a vengeance too. They hate us now. We went to the beach with their family. They got 4 little girls who are basically my nieces. They grew up with my daughter's best friends, and we're not allowed to be around them anymore. This year's been tough, but we stayed sober through it. I haven't felt like I needed to drink over that, you know. It's not a guarantee today. That's why I'm here speaking tonight. I got to do what I got to do to stay sober, you know. I help y'all, and it helps me. I hope somebody gets something out of it, you know. If nothing else, if you're a newcomer, just stay and listen to the feelings, because if you're an alcoholic like me, somebody's going to say something and you'll identify with the way you felt. It's not about what we did. It's the way we felt when we were doing it and the way we felt after we did it. That's what made me stay in AA. I appreciate y'all. Y'all saved my family. Thank you.